In light of South Africa celebrating 30 years of democracy this year, Apple Music has partnered with some trailblazing South Africans who have impactful contributions to society. Actors like Nomza Mombata, Konitwe Me, football legend Benny McCarthy, and designers such as Laduma and Rich Mnisi, just to name a few, compiled a playlist of what 30 years of freedom means to them in music. And we're now joined by two of those figures, DNA Brand Architect CEO Sylvester Chauke, whose list is topped by Mbongeni Ngema's Rolihlahla Mandela. And we're also joined by legendary musician PJ Powers, whose choice opened with Homeless by Paul Simon, followed by Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And we're joined by owner of Maxhosa luxury line, Laduma Ngokolo, whose first song is Hulukile, which is a hymn adapted by the late, great Tshepo Tshola. Good morning to all three of you. Welcome and thank you so much for your time. It's such an honor.
Good morning to you.
All right.
Morning, Master.
Thank you. So, PJ, I'm looking at your list here, which is absolutely fantastic. But my first question is, I don't see a PJ Powers song on your own list. There can't be 30 years of celebrating democracy without a PJ Powers song.
Let me just tell you, I thought about that, and I just thought to myself, you know, I'm just not one of those self-promoting people. And I thought, if I'm going to celebrate 30 years of freedom and democracy, people know my songs, and I just thought it was inappropriate to have my own material, you know, up there. I really did. And there are so many people that are as deserving, if not more deserving, on this playlist. So, yeah, I mean, people can listen to Jabulani and Feel So Strong and Pansula Jive and Home to Africa, and they can listen to it all the time. This is my choice of music to celebrate.
Well, I was about to say, honey,
30 years of democracy.
I have to agree to disagree with you. I was about to stop you right there and say, I have to agree to disagree with you. And guess what? If it's inappropriate for me, it's not for me. I'm adding Jabulani by PJ Powers to that list.
Okie dokie.
So talk to me about your selection. What do the last 30 years of democracy mean for you? And of the songs in your list, just isolate one and tell me what that means, particularly in this journey for you.
You know, 30 years of freedom and democracy it's such a mixed bag at the moment where we find ourselves in South Africa at the moment. But I think that the point of this conversation and the point of music is to focus on the positive, you know. And when I think of something like Ladysmith Black Mambazo, and I think of these young guys that came from Ladysmith and came up, and you know, I remember my first encounter with Joseph Shabalala. It was in 1983. Yeah, it was actually 1983, and he came up to me. It was my first show in Soweto, and I was a young 20-something-year-old person who was terrified. And he came up and he said, just be yourself. And that is what I've tried to do. It was the greatest words. And when I think of where Joseph and Ladysmith Black Mambazo, they've just come off a United States tour, and that they've been, more than anything, they've been true to their South African roots and sustained. I mean, I know some of it was pre-democracy, but they've just held on to what is authentically and truthfully and honestly them. And I think that that's what we need to do, is in our 30 years of find the moments in our 30 years of freedom and democracy that are truly, authentically, and us in a good light. And let's try in 31 years of freedom and democracy to emulate all the good. And let's leave the bad and the things that haven't happened and those things. Let's leave them behind as we embark on the next decade of our democracy.
All right. And for you, Sylvester, when you were given this task, which I can't imagine is easy, it wouldn't be easy for me, what were you hoping to put across in terms of your choice and song, celebrating the last 30 years of democracy?
So in 1994, I was 13 years old. So I wanted to capture kind of what was happening in that world of mine. And something that was quite important for me for my Apple Music playlist was how do I showcase this optimism that we've always had as a community and as a country? That even though it was a really challenging time for many of us, there was still that sense of optimism and positivity and putting out what we want to see in our country. And it's actually quite interesting because there are so many songs and so many artists and musicians that were really focusing on driving this optimism or this change that they wanted to see in the country. So my playlist just wanted to focus more on that optimism and energy that I felt as a 13-year-old back then.
Wow. Laduma, so interestingly, when I thought about this concept, right, that Apple has basically created this campaign to celebrate 30 years of democracy and the journey that we've walked, one of the first songs that came top of my mind was Boom Shaka. It's About Time.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember where I was when that song came out, right? So that's on your playlist.
Boom Shaka.
That's on your playlist, Laduma. Where does that song take you?
That song for me is more of a personal experience. Our late mother in about 1994, like right after 1994, she opened up a salon at our home in the lounge. So the most popular hairstyle that everyone was doing at the salon was the Boom Shaka braids. And Boom Shaka song was on loop. It was a hit at the time. You could see the buzz through the streets as well, that everyone was on that celebration moment of post-apartheid. The youth was rising. That was the first time for me, like seeing the youth so expressive. Yes, I was young. I was 8 years old at the time. But we as kids, even though we were told by our parents that it was difficult before 1994, things are about to change. But you could see it through the street with street bashes and concerts in small halls around the community. Boom Shaka came to Gqeberha, which is where I was born and raised, at a big hall, and they made a huge concert. So that track takes me back to that time.
And you've also got some very somber songs on there. Just staying with you, Laduma. You've got Hulukile, an adapted hymn, and Tate Tshepo-Tshola, the late and great. And interestingly, also Gulungile Baba, which in two different languages, South African languages, really translates as the same thing. Gulungile, of course, being by Sifiso Ncwane. So tell me about that selection.
Hulukile was actually my late mother's favorite song. She used to play with that song with so much emotions, and our late mother was a person that grew up through difficulty, and so did we in our young stages and up to teenage years. So every morning we needed a sense of motivation, and Hulukile was the song that was popular at home. Amongst us as siblings, growing up from teenagers to adults. Sifiso Ncwane's song was a song of solace, that we used to listen to gain hope that God is in control. Whatever fate comes our way, it is a fate that is designed by God. So those two tracks are that emotional to me.
That's very good to know, and I think even wherever his soul may be resting in that day, Tshepo-Tshola would probably be glad to hear that, because he has said to me personally, while he was alive, that song was also some consolation for him after the brutal murder of his wife during the height of apartheid. So PJ, coming back to you, what songs gave you solace during the 30 years through this transition that we've seen South Africa come out of a very dark time and into democracy?
It's kind of a mixed bag. On the subject of Tshepo-Tshola, I had, and Sifiso Ncwane, both of those people I had the great honor of doing duets with Tshepo-Tshola with the Right to Learn, which was about the Right to Learn campaign, give the children education, it's the key to liberation. And also with Sifiso Ncwane, which actually I'm sad now I didn't put that on my playlist. Now that, all these things, as you go through your playlist,
there are too many.
There's too many. You needed to give us like a 65-song playlist. But I must be honest, what voices, if anyone's voice made me believe that something could happen, it was Sepultura's voice, because it was just an all-encompassing. The songs that made me hopeful, when I saw Brenda Fassie burst onto stage, and when she did Good Black President, and when she did, Weekend Special. And then, strangely enough, I did choose a couple of international artists, because if I think of Mike and the Mechanics, every generation, sing it loud,
yes,
sing it clear, Living Years, for me, I couldn't leave that song off, because it's so strange that this came along, this request for me to do this playlist at a time where globally, I know we're talking about 30 years of freedom and democracy in our country, but globally, we need to start, and for me, Living Years by Mike and the Mechanics just deserved a place in terms of hope and that we can.
Yeah.
I am the eternal optimist.
Yes.
I do believe we can turn things around. And I did believe in 94. I didn't vote till 94. And I believed in this country and still do. So the songs that gave me joy, actually, were the songs that, and also the songs that really, if I think of Weeping, by then Bright Blue, which was then covered by Vusi Masasela, Weeping for me was just so typical of what we went through prior to 94, having been around for the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and I don't know, somebody's going to push me over a hill to get rid of me.
No. Of course. I mean, the song that you just referenced. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Weeping for me it really did tell the tale. And as a white woman growing up from 94, the embarrassment that I felt that no one had and still hasn't yet said, we're sorry. We really are sorry. We messed up.
Yeah. So I'm going to close with you very briefly, Sylvester. What do you think you would love for people to take away, not only from your playlist, but from this entire concept of the Apple celebrating 30 years of democracy?
I think that a lot of the playlists are a reflection of where the country was and what we hope for as South Africans. And I hope that people will be able to listen to songs like Stop the War, Where Did We Go Wrong by Stimela, Sanko Moja asking questions like Joy asking questions like Paradise Road, Now or Never. Those questions and those songs that are asking us to think deeply about where we are and look within and look at how do we try to ensure that the ideals of the country we want to see is still at the essence or still at the core of what we want to be able to experience as a country. Because these songs, whilst they are very reflective, they're also very, very relevant today, right? Because we are sitting in a space as a country where we are asking those questions, where do we go wrong? It's now or never. And it's amazing that whilst they are songs that reflect 30 years, I also feel that they can also reflect the next 30 years going forward. That where we are sitting right now is because of a lot of people, many souls that have stood and have sang and have picketed and have fought and have died for this democracy. And if anybody can take this idea of optimism, but that we can change our trajectory by really focusing on what we want to see, is something that I hope that this Apple Music playlist across all artists really reflects that.